1991, scientists made a discovery, headway, that really opened the door to this conversation. They discovered every human heart, approximately 40,000 or so specialized cells configured in a way that creates a neural network in the heart. They're brain-like cells, but they're not in the brain, they're in the heart. And it's actually called the little brain in the heart. And these 40,000 specialized cells are called sensory neurites. What they found, what the scientists discovered, is that these cells think independently of the cranial brain. They feel and they remember independently of the cranial brain. And what that means is every experience that we have, even this one right now, I'm registering this experience in two places. This is a good experience, so it's not a problem. I'm registering it in my mind, in my cranial mind, as well as in my heart. But if we were having a trauma, it would still be registered in both places. And if I tried to heal that trauma only through thinking about it or talking from my mind, it might feel incomplete. The healing may feel incomplete. And the reason is because I've only addressed what happened in here. I haven't addressed what happened in here. Now, we know this intuitively, because people all the time, they point. I did an experiment a few years ago. Every culture I went to, and every age group, I asked little kids, I said, where are you sitting right now? Show me where you're sitting. And people say, I'm sitting right here. Right here. I don't want to hit my mic, but they say, right here. Or you ask the indigenous people, where do you live? Well, this is my home. And almost instinctively, we know that the heart is the seat of our existence, the seat of our being. You don't see them hitting their head, or their arm or something else. So we know that. So when we talk about heart intelligence, what we're talking about is the ability for these neurons to communicate with the neurons in a way that is meaningful to those neurons. Having experiences where we don't know what the answer is. There's nobody to ask. Everyone gives us a different answer. We can't Google an answer. And we don't need that, because we always have this right here. These neurons are linked to a wisdom, to an intelligence that is right for us. Mine is right for me, yours is right for you. And any question that you ask this intelligence, it will answer you in a way that will serve you in that moment. It'll never tell you to do anything dangerous or anything that would hurt anyone else. I'll give you a perfect example. I was in Australia over 9/11. Couldn't get back into my own country until the flights were flying again. And when they did fly, I was in Sydney, Australia, and there was a Boeing 747, that's a big plane, with fewer than 20 people that were going to come to the U.S. And there was, at the ticket counter, we were at the gate to board, and the agent said, there's so few people, we're not going to board by boarding rows. You can board this plane if you want to, and go to America. And I said, well, you don't sound very encouraging. She says, I don't know what happened in that country. She says, but this plane's going to go there. If you want to go there, I don't know if it's going to happen again. I don't know if it's over, but if you want to get on the plane, get on the plane. And really didn't instill a lot of confidence in me or the other people that were there. And I said, hold that thought, just wait a minute. And I stepped around the corner, and there's a technique where you can you touch your heart like this. And when you touch your heart, your awareness will always go to the place where you feel the touch. So when you call your attention into your heart center in this way, and you slow your breathing, just a few breaths slower than usual. When you slow your breathing, it tells your body that you are safe. You're in a place that's safe. And when you're safe, when you feel safe, it's a switch. It's like an emotional trigger that frees the rejuvenating and the healing chemistry in the body, because the stress and survival chemistry is not needed if you feel safe. So when you slow your breathing and focus in your heart, that is the doorway, and shamans will do this all the time. Monks, nuns, you see them do this all the time, to that heart intelligence. And I asked my heart, I said, my heart, is this a safe flight for me to take? Because my head, if you ask your head, this is so interesting scientifically, because the brain's a polarity organ, left and right brain. And there's always going to be a right and a wrong, good and a bad, success, failure. And if you ask your brain a question under pressure, your brain will go through the logic and the ego loops that will keep you from making the answer. When you ask your heart, the heart's not a polarity organ. So you consciously free yourself from those loops into what is called heart intelligence. And generally your heart will answer. Your heart knows you very well. It's been with you a long time. Your heart will answer before you even finish the question. You ask in a single concise sentence that the heart can respond to. Your heart doesn't need a preamble. It doesn't need a whole explanation of why you're asking. Just ask a single question. And my heart told me, and it wasn't woo-woo, airy-fairy stuff. I mean, these are neurons that understand and are cutting through, all the static that would come from this. And I felt like it was a good flight. I took that flight. I got back to LA. I came back to a very different country, and there were only 9 flights to my home in New Mexico through the Albuquerque airport. And I was on one of those 9 flights, and because I trusted my heart, I got home that day. Other people were freaked out. They said maybe they know something we don't. Maybe they had a briefing and they're not telling us, and they stayed until they felt like it was safe. So it's not right, wrong, good, or bad, but we all have times in our lives where something happens and we have to make a choice, sometimes really quickly. Sometimes it can be life and death in terms of auto accidents and things like that. I went through a period in my life where I was the first one on the scene for auto accidents, but it just kept happening. And I thought, the first couple times I said, I was surprised, and after a while I wasn't even surprised anymore. But I'd have to make choices, make decisions about what to do in that moment until help got there, and I trusted.
Everyone listening today, I'm going to speak to you directly again. You have in your heart approximately 40,000 specialized cells that are like brain cells, but they're not in your brain. They're in your heart. They're called sensory neurites. So they are brain-like cells in the heart. They are concentrated in such a degree that they actually call this the little brain in the heart. So what does this mean? This isn't a metaphor. And I was just in Europe, and many of the people there, they said, well, this is a metaphor, right? You're using this as an analogy, and I'm saying, no, this is literal. These neurites in the heart, the little brain in the heart, they can learn independently from the neurons in our brain. They can think independently from the neurons in our brain. They can remember independently from the neurons in our brain, and they communicate with us separately from the neurons in our brain in a language that we may or may not recognize, because we are conditioned to see the world through our brain, and if we're lucky, at some point in our adult lives, we get to connect with our hearts. So we have now access to these sensory neurites. We can work with the brain independently of our heart, and I think most of us know how to do that very well. We can work with the heart independently of the brain. Scientists say it's all about the brain, forget about the heart. And I've been around a lot of my friends who say it's all about the heart, forget about the brain. They actually chastise the brain. The left brain is this bad thing. But here's what the science is showing us. Both of those ways of viewing ourselves are incomplete. When we marry the heart and the brain together, when we harmonize the heart and the brain, this is the extended neural network that makes us different from all other forms of life. This is where our deepest empathy, compassion, intuition comes from. And so people say, well, why would you want to do something? What would be the purpose of harmonizing your heart and your brain? But it means more if you know that there's something very, very special about this. So when we are able to harmonize the little brain in the heart with the big brain in the head, we can do that. Heart-brain harmony. So many benefits, and they're different from one another. But for example, we can process information very, very quickly. Really fast information recall. And it makes sense. Here's the reason why. Because when we access information with our heart, with our intuition, we don't go through the logic and the fear and all the self-esteem and all the doubt that we have in our brain with our ego and our mental functions. Our heart doesn't work that way. Affirmations are very, very powerful tools to implement change in our lives anytime, but they are especially potent. Here's the key. They are especially potent if we are communicating with our subconscious in a language the subconscious recognizes through channels that the subconscious recognizes. So when we harmonize our heart and our brain, what we're doing is we're opening, it's a hotline to the subconscious. That's where we would introduce our affirmations of our perfect relationships or our healing. This is where the healing begins in our bodies.
If you're trying to recall those things with the mind, in the polarity, the mind and the ego, and the subconscious patterning want a polarity response. They want right or wrong or good or bad. And when you look at the wrongness or the badness, that's where the hurt comes from. And this is one of those things, Brian, where people, it's beyond an explanation. People simply have to experience to really know what it's all about. When we begin to access the memories from the heart that do not have that polarity, it's almost surreal. It's like you can be honest with yourself and objective about what happened without immersing yourself in the pain. And that is where these neuropeptides, they will begin to free. And of course, that has external, sometimes when they're free, you get a rash, sometimes because they're moving quickly, obviously tears, a lot of emotion, a shift in breathing, but it happens very, very quickly. And then you can pass the neuropeptides out of the body, and what that means is that the hurt now has been redefined. You don't change what happened, but you change your ability to respond to what happened.